It was past midnight in downtown Chicago when Mark Thompson's fingers trembled over his phone's keyboard. 3 days until payday, an empty fridge at home, and his 8-year-old daughter Sarah had gone to bed hungry again. After 16 hours of back-to-back shifts as a maintenance worker, exhaustion clouded his judgment as he typed out a desperate message asking for help. In his fatigue, he didn't notice he'd selected the wrong contact. His new CEO, a billionaire he'd never met, instead of his friend Mike. The moment he realized his mistake, his heart stopped. He'd be fired for sure. But then his phone lit up with 2 words that would change everything. Meet me tomorrow. Could a simple texting mistake become the miracle his family so desperately needed? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The eviction notice had been sitting on Mark Thompson's kitchen counter for 3 days. Its bright orange color, a constant reminder of how far they'd fallen. He'd tried hiding it under bills and junk mail, but somehow its edges always found a way to peek through, like a wound that refused to heal. At 5:30 a.m., Mark's alarm cut through the pre-dawn silence. He rolled over quietly, careful not to let his bed's ancient springs creak too loudly. Sarah was still asleep in the next room, and these precious morning moments were the only peace she got anymore. The bathroom mirror told its usual story. Grey streaks appearing too early in his beard, dark circles under his eyes that never seemed to fade. At 42, he looked a decade older than he should, but appearance was a luxury he couldn't afford to worry about, not when Sarah's school lunch account was running on empty again. He pulled on his worn maintenance uniform. The Chen Industries logo faded from countless washes. 3 years ago, when Catherine Martinez was still alive, they'd laughed about how he'd ended up working for a billion-dollar company, but still couldn't afford new shoes. Now that laughter felt like it belonged to someone else's life. "Daddy?" Sarah Martinez's voice drifted from her doorway, still heavy with sleep. "Can I have breakfast with you today?" His heart clenched. She was trying to sound casual, but he knew why she was asking. Yesterday's dinner had been their last pack of ramen noodles split between them. "Hey, princess," he forced brightness into his voice. "You should sleep a little longer. It's not even 6 yet." "I'm not tired." She padded into the kitchen, her 2 small pajamas showing inches of ankle. At 8 years old, she was growing faster than his paychecks could keep up with. "And I finished my math homework. Want to check it?" Mark's throat tightened. Sarah had inherited Catherine's brilliant mind, straight A's even while their world crumbled around them. Her teacher had recommended her for the gifted program, but the extra fees might as well have been $1 million. He opened their nearly empty refrigerator, its light flickering like it was running on the same empty tank as everything else. In their lives, half a carton of milk, some butter, and 2 eggs remained. He'd been saving them for her breakfast tomorrow, but the hollow look in her eyes made the decision for him. "How about scrambled eggs? We can check that homework while they cook." Sarah's face lit up, both at the promise of food and time with her father. She retrieved her notebook from her backpack, its cover decorated with carefully drawn stars and mathematics symbols. Even her doodles were equations. As Mark cooked, Sarah walked him through her pre-algebra problems. Every correct answer made his chest swell with pride and ache with inadequacy. His daughter deserved so much more than this. More than counting coins for lunch, more than wearing outgrown clothes, more than watching her father fail her day after day. "This one's about calculating interest rates," Sarah explained, pointing to a word problem. "Like for loans and stuff." Mark nearly dropped the spatula. The irony of his daughter mastering interest calculations while he dodged calls from credit card companies wasn't lost on him. He'd been juggling bills like a circus, performer robbing Peter to pay Paul, each month falling a little further behind. "That's great work, sweetheart," he managed, dividing the eggs onto 2 plates. He gave her the larger portion, ignoring his own hunger. You're so smart, just like your mom. Sarah's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Do you think she'd be proud of me? Oh, Sarah. Mark knelt beside her chair. She was always proud of you, and she'd be even prouder now. He brushed a strand of dark hair from her face. Catherine's hair, Catherine's eyes. You're the best thing we ever did together. The morning sun was beginning to streak through their grimy windows as they finished breakfast. Sarah insisted on washing her own plate, standing on her tiptoes to reach the sink. Such a small act of independence, but it made Mark's eyes burn. She was growing up too fast, forced to be too responsible too soon. Ready for school? He asked, checking his watch. If they hurried, he could drop her off before his shift started. Sarah nodded, already changing into her school clothes. Another growth spurt, and they'd need to figure out new ones. Maybe he could pick up some extra shifts on the weekend if his supervisor would approve the overtime. As they left their small apartment, Mark's phone felt heavy in his pocket. In a few hours, he'd have to face the consequences of his late night. Desperation of that mistaken text that could cost him everything. But for now, watching Sarah walk ahead of him with her oversized backpack and unstoppable determination, he found the strength to take another step forward. What he didn't know then was that this ordinary morning, heavy with familiar struggles, would be the last of its kind. Change was coming, not in the slow, grinding way he'd grown used to, but in a sudden rush that would transform their lives forever. The maintenance room at Chen Industries felt more like home than Mark's apartment these days. 16 hours into his double shift, he sat on an overturned bucket, staring at his phone's banking app. The screen glowed harshly in the dimly lit space, its numbers more damaging than the cleaning chemicals surrounding him. Account balance, $247.83. 3 overdraft fees from last week's rent check had pushed them further into the red. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez, Sarah's after-school caregiver, lit up his screen. Sarah didn't eat her dinner again. Said she wasn't hungry, but I know better. Mark, if you need help. He closed the message, shame burning in his throat. Mrs. Rodriguez, a grandmother who watched Sarah for a fraction of what she should charge, had already done too much. Last month, she'd accidentally made too much arroz con pollo, sending home leftovers that fed Sarah for 2 days. The industrial fan hummed overhead as Mark scrolled through his contacts. His brother hadn't responded to calls in months, not since Mark had failed to repay that last loan. His parents, retired and living on Social Security in Florida, had already drained their modest savings, helping after Catherine's illness. Friends had slowly drifted away, tired of always being asked for help, never able to be paid back. Only Mike Sullivan, his old army buddy, still answered his calls. But Mike had his own struggles. 3 kids, a wife on disability, and a mechanic's salary that barely covered their needs. Still, Mike had never turned him down, even if he could only spare $20. Mark's finger hovered over Mike's name. The fluorescent lights buzzed above him like his own conscience, reminding him of every borrowed dollar, every missed repayment, every promise he couldn't keep. But Sarah's face floated before him, how she'd pushed her ramen around the bowl. Last night, trying to make it look like she'd eaten more than she had. His work phone chirped, another maintenance call from the executive floor. Some vice president's coffee maker wasn't working, and apparently that constituted an emergency. Mark pulled himself up, his knees crackling like bubble wrap. As he gathered his tools, a memory ambushed him. Catherine in her hospital bed, making him promise to keep Sarah safe, to give her every opportunity. She's going to change the world someday, Catherine had whispered, her voice already fading. Promise me you won't let anything stop her. The executive floor was another world, all glass, chrome, and expensive art pieces that probably cost more than his annual salary. Mark kept his eyes down as he worked on the coffee maker, trying to ignore the casual displays of wealth around him. A framed magazine cover caught his attention. Daniel Chen, the company's CEO, named Innovator of the Year. The article mentioned Chen's latest philanthropic venture, a foundation supporting underprivileged students. Mark's hands trembled as he finished the repair. Sarah's gifted program application sat at home on their kitchen table, the deadline approaching like a ticking bomb. The enrollment fee alone was more than he made in a week. Back in the maintenance room, exhaustion clouded his judgment. The night shift was always harder, fewer people around, more time to think, to worry, to feel the weight of failure pressing down. He picked up his phone again, his vision blurring as he opened his messages. "Hey, I hate to ask again," he typed, "but Sarah hasn't eaten properly in days. I get paid Friday, but we're completely empty. Could you spare anything? I'll pay you back next week, I promise." His thumb pressed send before his pride could stop him. Then his heart stopped. In his fatigue, he'd selected the wrong contact. The message had gone not to Mike Sullivan, but to D. Chen, his new CEO, a man he'd never met, whose name had entered his phone only because of a company-wide directory update. Oh God, no. Mark's fingers shook as he typed a frantic apology. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Chen. Wrong number. Please disregard." This was completely unprofessional. He stared at the screen, watching those dreaded delivery confirmation checkmarks appear. Tomorrow he'd probably be called to HR, his years of service. Ended by one careless mistake. He'd lose everything. Their apartment, Sarah's school, what little stability they had left. Then his phone buzzed. 2 words appeared under Daniel Chen's name. "Meet me tomorrow." Mark sat in the harsh fluorescent light, his heart pounding against his ribs, wondering if he'd just destroyed their lives or, by some impossible chance, saved them. Mark didn't sleep. He spent the night hours staring at his phone, reading and rereading those 2 words from Daniel Chen. "Meet me tomorrow." No time specified, no location given. No hint whether he should be updating his resume or preparing for a miracle. Dawn found him at Sarah's door, watching her sleep. She'd kicked off her covers again, one arm wrapped around the worn teddy bear Catherine's parents had sent from Mexico after the funeral. The morning light caught the silver of Catherine's cross around Sarah's neck, the only piece of real jewelry they owned anymore. "Daddy." Sarah stirred, blinking at him. "Why are you standing there?" "Just thinking how lucky I am," he managed, his voice rough. If this was their last morning in this apartment, he wanted to remember every detail. "How about pancakes today?" Sarah's eyes widened. They hadn't had pancakes since, he couldn't remember when, but the ancient box of mix had been sitting in their cabinet for months, saved for some special occasion that never came. Today felt like the time to use it, whether in celebration or farewell. As they ate, Sarah chatted about her upcoming science test, unaware of the storm brewing in her father's world. Mark nodded at the right moments, trying to focus on her words instead of the knot in his stomach. She was explaining molecular structures when his work phone buzzed. "Mr. Thompson, please come to the executive suite at 9 a.m. sharp. Mr. Chen is expecting you." The text was from Chen's executive assistant, formal, professional, terrifying. "You're different today," Sarah observed, setting down her fork. Sometimes she was too perceptive for her own good. Catherine's insight living on in those dark eyes. "Did something happen?" Mark forced a smile. "Just a big meeting at work, Princess. Nothing to worry about." "Is it about your job?" The question was too direct, too knowing. She'd overheard him on the phone with bill collectors too many times, seen him counting coins too often. "Everything's going to be fine," he promised, hoping he wasn't lying to her. "Mrs. Rodriguez will pick you up from school today, okay? I might be working late, or cleaning out my locker," he thought. The morning maintenance crew was already gossiping when he arrived. Jerry, his supervisor, pulled him aside immediately. "Thompson, what did you do?" The CEO's office called down asking about "you." It's complicated, Mark mumbled, changing into his uniform. The Chen Industries logo seemed to mock him now. Look, Jerry lowered his voice, you're my best worker. Whatever's going on, just be honest with them. Maybe they'll transfer you to another building instead of, Mark nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Jerry was a good boss, had even offered him extra shifts when he could. But there was nothing he could do about this. The executive floor seemed different in daylight. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago sprawled below like another world. Mark's reflection in the glass looked alien, his uniform out of place among the designer suits hurrying past. Chen's assistant, a woman with kind eyes and grey-streaked hair, met him at the elevator. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Helen. Please follow me." She led him through a maze of glass offices to a private conference room. "Mr. Chen will be with you shortly. Would you like some water?" Mark shook his head, then changed his mind and accepted. His throat felt like sandpaper. Left alone, he studied his surroundings. The conference room probably cost more than he'd make in 10 years. A wall of awards testified to Chen Industries' success, innovation prizes, humanitarian recognition, business excellence. Above them all hung a black and white photograph. A young Daniel Chen with his father, standing in front of their first factory. They were smiling, but their clothes were worn, their poses uncertain. It was the only personal touch in the room. The door opened. Mark stood so quickly he nearly knocked over his water. Daniel Chen entered alone, dressed not in the power suit Mark expected, but in simple slacks and a blue Oxford shirt. He looked younger in person than in his photos, his face bearing laugh lines instead of the stern expression from magazine covers. "Mark Thompson," Chen said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, calloused, not the soft handshake of a man born to wealth. "I think we need to talk about your text message." Mark's heart thundered in his ears. In that moment, all he could think about was Sarah, waiting at school, wearing her mother's cross and carrying her dreams in an oversized backpack. Whatever happened next would change both their lives forever. "Please sit down," Chen gestured to the chair across from him. He didn't take his own seat behind the imposing conference table, instead pulling out a chair adjacent to Mark's. The casual gesture somehow made everything more surreal. "Mr. Chen, I want to apologize again for—" Mark began, but Chen raised a hand. "Before we discuss the text, I'd like to know more about your daughter." Chen's voice was quiet, carrying an accent that seemed to fade in and out. "Sarah, isn't it?" Mark's throat tightened. Of all the ways he'd imagined this conversation starting, this wasn't one of them. "Yes, sir, Sarah Martinez. She's 8. "Martinez?" Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. "Not Thompson?" "She has her mother's surname, Catherine, my late wife. We agreed before Sarah was born. Martinez was important to her family's heritage." Chen nodded, his eyes moving to the black and white photograph on the wall. "Family heritage matters. My father insisted our first factory keep its original name, Chen and Son, even after we became Chen Industries. He said it reminded us where we came from." He turned back to Mark. "Tell me about Sarah." Something in Chen's tone made Mark forget his prepared apologies. "She's brilliant, top of her class in mathematics and science. Her teacher says she's reading at a high school level. He hesitated, then continued. "She was recommended in for the gifted program, but I couldn't afford the fees. And her mother? Cancer. 3 years ago. Sarah was 5. The words still hurt to say. Catherine was a research scientist at Northwestern. She always said Sarah inherited her love for numbers." Chen was silent for a moment, studying Mark with an intensity that made him want to look away. But there was something in the billionaire's eyes, not pity, but something deeper, more personal. "Your maintenance supervisor, Jerry, says you're his best worker, never missed a shift, always willing to stay late, first to volunteer for emergency calls. Yet your text message mentioned not having food for your daughter." Mark's face burned. I get paid Friday. Usually I can make things stretch, but with the overdraft fees and the rent increase—" He stopped himself. Chen didn't need to hear his excuses. How much is the gifted program fee? The question caught Mark off guard. $20,500 for the year, plus materials and your current salary? $35,000, sir. Chen stood abruptly, walking to the window. The morning sun cast his shadow long across the carpet. When I was Sarah's age, my father worked 3 jobs. One morning I found him crying over a math competition entry form. The fee was $20. Might as well have been $20,000 to us then. He turned back to Mark. "Do you know what he did?" Mark shook his head. He sold his father's watch, the only thing he had from his own childhood in China. Said no fee should stand between a child and their potential. Chen's hand went to his wrist, where an old-fashioned watch faced inward. I wear it now to remind me of that lesson. Walking back to the table, Chen pressed a button on the conference phone. "Helen, please bring in the paperwork we discussed." Mark's heart rate doubled. Paperwork usually meant termination. Helen entered with a folder, placing it before Chen with a smile that seemed knowing. "Mark, I'm creating a new position, Facilities Operations Manager. The salary is $85,000 per year, with full benefits including dependent education assistance. The job requires someone who understands our maintenance systems from the ground up, who can identify inefficiencies and implement solutions across all our Chicago properties." Mark stared at him, uncomprehending. "In addition," Chen continued, opening the folder, "the Chen Foundation has a scholarship program for exceptional students. It covers all educational expenses through college, provided the student maintains their academic excellence." He slid 2 documents across the table. "One is your job offer. The other is Sarah's scholarship application, already approved." I don't understand," Mark managed. "Why?" Chen touched his father's watch again. "Because talent and determination deserve nurturing, whether they're found in a maintenance room or a boardroom. Because no child should go hungry while their parent works 16-hour shifts. And because sometimes, Mr. Thompson, a wrong number turns out to be exactly right." Mark looked down at the papers, his vision blurring. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. Probably Mrs. Rodriguez checking on him. For the first time in 3 years, he would have good news to share. "There's one condition," Chen added, his voice taking on a hint of humor. "You'll need a new phone with a better contact list organization. System, company provided, of course." Monday morning felt like stepping into someone else's life. Mark stood in front of his bedroom mirror, adjusting a tie that had come from the department store shopping trip Chen's assistant Helen had insisted on arranging. The charcoal suit felt foreign against his skin, a far cry from the maintenance uniform hanging in his closet like a reminder of a different era. "Daddy, you look like a movie star." Sarah bounced into the room, already dressed for school in her new clothes. The scholarship had come with what Chen called a transitional stipend, enough to ensure Sarah had everything she needed for the gifted program starting next week. "More like a penguin," Mark muttered, fighting with the tie's knot. Catherine had always done this for him on the rare occasions he'd needed to dress up. "Here, let me help." The voice came from their small kitchen, where Mrs. Rodriguez was preparing Sarah's lunch. A real lunch, with fresh fruit and vegetables, not the meager sandwiches Mark had been cobbling together. "My Carlos wore ties for 40 years at the bank. I know all the tricks." Her weathered hands made quick work of the knot, then smoothed his collar. "There, now you look like a proper ejecutivo." She stepped back, her eyes glistening. Catherine would be so proud. The mention of Catherine made Mark's throat tight. He'd visited her grave yesterday, telling her everything that had happened, imagining her laugh of delight at this turn of events. "Our girl's going to get every chance now, Cat." he'd whispered to the quiet stones. The executive floor felt different now that he had a reason to be there. Helen met him at the elevator, tablet in hand. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. Your office is ready, and I've scheduled brief introductions with your team at 9. But Mr. Chen would like to see you first. His office." The words still didn't feel real. Chen was reviewing documents when Mark entered, but he set them aside immediately. "Ah, Mark, the suit suits you." He smiled at his own wordplay. "Ready for day one?" "I'm not sure, sir. I've never managed anything except maintenance schedules." "But you managed those brilliantly," Chen replied. "Leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about understanding people and processes. You've been seeing this company from the ground up for years. Now you'll help us use that perspective to make real changes." The morning passed in a blur of introductions and information. His team, he had a team now, included engineers, facility coordinators, and maintenance supervisors from all 6 Chicago properties. Jerry, his old supervisor, had been promoted to senior site manager. "Told you you were my best worker," Jerry said during their meeting, beaming like a proud father. "Just didn't expect to be proven right, quite like this." Around noon, Helen appeared with a sandwich and a stack of reports. "You missed lunch," she said, placing them on his desk. "A habit you'll need to break. Mr. Chen insists on work-life balance." Mark stared at the sandwich. Fresh turkey on artisan bread, nothing like the vending machine meals he used to grab between maintenance calls. "Helen, why is everyone being so kind? This sort of thing doesn't happen in real life." She sat down across from him, her expression softening. "Did you know I was Mr. Chen's father's secretary? Back when this was still Chen & Son, operating out of a converted warehouse." She smiled at his surprise. Daniel was about Sarah's age. Then, he used to do his homework in the break room while his father worked late. He never forgot what it was like to be that child, waiting for a parent who had to choose between time and survival. After work, Mark picked up Sarah from her first gifted program orientation. She bubbled with excitement about the advanced mathematics curriculum, the science projects, the computer programming classes. In her hands, she clutched a course catalogue that looked more like college than elementary school. "And Jenny from my class is in the program too," Sarah exclaimed as they walked to their car. "No more bus rides home. Her mom's going to help me with the summer reading list, and I'm going to help Jenny with algebra." Mark listened, marveling at how quickly children adapted to change. In 1 week, they'd gone from counting coins for ramen to planning summer reading lists. Yet Sarah's enthusiasm wasn't about the material improvements. It was about the opportunities, the challenges, the chance to fully embrace her potential. At a red light, he glanced at his new phone, its screen showing an email from Chen about tomorrow's strategy meeting. The contact list was meticulously organized, Helen's doing, with no chance of any wrong number miracles happening again. Though as Mark was beginning to suspect, there was nothing wrong about that message at all. The email arrived during Mark's second week. Concerns about recent organizational changes. He found it buried in his inbox, copied to several senior managers. The sender, Victoria Hawthorne, was the regional operations director, who'd been overseas during his promotion. "While we appreciate attempts to diversify management," the message read, "promoting maintenance staff to executive positions without proper qualifications sets a concerning precedent. This decision should be reviewed by the board." Mark read it 3 times, each word hitting like a physical blow. He'd been waiting for this, the other shoe to drop. The moment someone pointed out he didn't belong here. His finger hovered over Chen's number in his contacts, then withdrew. He couldn't run to the CEO every time he faced resistance. A knock at his office door interrupted his thoughts. "Got a minute?" Jerry entered holding a tablet. "The energy efficiency reports you requested. Interesting findings. Mark welcomed the distraction, but Jerry wasn't finished. Also, heard about Hawthorne's email. Don't let her get to you. She's been trying to get her nephew installed in senior management for years. You saw the email? Everyone did. Office gossip travels faster than maintenance requests. Jerry sat down, his expression serious. Look, you should know, there's talk. Some folks are saying you got this job because of that text message, that it was some kind of guilt reaction from Chen. The air felt heavy in Mark's modern office. Through the glass walls, he could see other executives moving through their day, their ease in this environment apparent in every gesture. He thought of Sarah, proudly showing him her first advanced math assignment last night. She'd belonged in that gifted program instantly, while he still felt like an imposter in his own office. Maybe they're right, Mark admitted. I have no degree, no management experience. Bull, Jerry cut him off. You managed a team of 15 maintenance workers across 3 shifts. You handled million-dollar equipment installations. You created our preventive maintenance scheduling system, the one the company now uses in all its properties. You did all that for maintenance wages while raising a daughter alone. Before Mark could respond, his computer chimed. Another email, this time from Robert Walsh in Finance. Quarterly budget review meeting moved to 2 p.m. Please bring your department's cost-cutting proposals. The meeting I haven't been told about until now, Mark muttered. For proposals I didn't know I needed. Jerry's face darkened. They're testing you. Hawthorne's crowd. They expect you to fail. Mark checked his watch. 2 hours to prepare. Then I better not fail. He spent the next hour diving into maintenance cost reports, years of hands-on experience guiding his analysis. Helen appeared with coffee and a suggestion to check the archived efficiency studies from 2023. By the time he entered the conference room, his tablet contained 3 years of data and a plan he'd seen the need for since his first week on the job. Victoria Hawthorne sat at the table's far end. Her expression suggested she'd already written the email about his incompetence. Robert Walsh barely glanced up from his phone. Mr. Thompson, Hawthorne's smile didn't reach her eyes. I trust you've prepared your proposal for reducing operational costs. Mark thought of Catherine, how she'd faced down academic committees with data and determination. He thought of Sarah, tackling advanced mathematics with fearless enthusiasm. Then he opened his presentation. Actually, I'm proposing a strategic investment, not a reduction. He pulled up his first slide. Our current maintenance protocols waste approximately 2.3 million annually across our Chicago properties. Here's why. For the next 20 minutes, he walked them through it all. The redundant systems checks, the inefficient scheduling, the expensive emergency repairs that preventive maintenance could avoid. Every point backed by data he'd gathered during years of night shifts and double shifts, now organized into the corporate language he'd been studying since his promotion. Implementation costs would be offset within 8 months, he concluded. After that, projected annual savings of $1.7 million, not counting reduced equipment replacement costs. Silence followed. Walsh was actually looking at him now. Calculator. App open on his phone. Even Hawthorne's perfect posture had slipped slightly. These numbers, Walsh said finally, they're solid. How did you compile all this? I've been maintaining these systems for 5 years, Mark replied. Sometimes the best view of a company's operations comes from the ground up. He caught movement at the conference room door. Chen, standing quietly, a small smile playing at his lips. The CEO nodded once, then continued down the hall without entering. Mark gathered his materials, feeling the shift in the room's energy. He hadn't just survived their test, he'd changed the conversation entirely. As he headed back to his office, his phone buzzed with a text from Sarah's teacher. Sarah's math project selected for district competition. 2 small victories, he thought. Not bad for a Tuesday. Sarah's gifted program acceptance letter lay next to Mark's latest project specifications on their new kitchen table. a small upgrade they'd allowed themselves after the first month's salary. Both documents carried weight. Sarah's first major assignment in advanced mathematics, Mark's proposal for restructuring maintenance operations across all Chicago properties. Both due tomorrow. I don't understand why it's not working, Sarah's voice quavered slightly. She sat surrounded by papers covered in equations, her dark hair falling forward to hide her face. A gesture so like Catherine, it made Mark's chest ache. Everyone else got it already. Mark glanced at his laptop screen, where email notifications kept appearing. Hawthorne had concerns about his proposal timeline. Walsh needed revised budgets by morning. 3 facility managers wanted meetings before noon, but Sarah's shoulders were shaking. "Let me see, Princess." He closed the laptop. The corporate world could wait 10 minutes. Moving to Sarah's side, he studied her work. Algebraic equations more complex than anything he'd seen in his own schooling. "Talk me through it." "We're supposed to solve for patterns," Sarah explained, frustration bleeding into her voice. "Find the underlying formula. But every time I think I have it, the next number proves me wrong. Jenny figured it out in 5 minutes." Mark recognized this moment. The first time Sarah was meeting academic material that didn't yield to her. Immediate understanding. The first challenge to her self-image as the smart one. "You know," he said carefully, "this reminds me of something your mom once told me. She was working on her doctoral research, hitting walls with her data analysis. I found her crying in our old apartment's kitchen at 3 in the morning. Sarah looked up. They rarely talked about Catherine's academic life. It had been too painful before. But now, seeing their daughter tackle advanced mathematics, the memories felt right to share. What did she do? She stepped back, looked at the problem from a different angle, said sometimes we get so focused on finding the answer we expect, we miss the answer that's actually there. He pointed to Sarah's paper. What if the pattern isn't in the numbers themselves? Sarah frowned, then suddenly straightened. The relationships between them. It's not the values, it's how they change. Her pencil flew across the paper, excitement replacing frustration. Dad, that's it, Mark smiled, remembering Catherine's similar epiphany moments. As Sarah worked, his phone buzzed again. Helen. Emergency. Meeting called for 7 a.m. Hawthorne pushing back on maintenance restructure, the corporate world crashing back in. Mark had learned more corporate politics in 3 weeks than he'd learned maintenance procedures in 5 years. Every proposal met. Resistance, every success questioned. Today, he'd overheard someone calling him Chen's charity case. Done. Sarah's triumph pulled him back. She held up her completed assignment, eyes shining. Can we call Mrs. Rodriguez? She wanted to know when I figured it out. Of course. Mark watched as Sarah dialed, speaking rapid-fire Spanish that was getting better each week, thanks to her former caregiver's continued lessons. Some relationships, thankfully, hadn't changed with their circumstances. Later, after Sarah was asleep, Mark returned to his proposal. The maintenance restructuring wasn't just about efficiency. It would create advancement paths for workers like he'd been, opportunities for education and growth. Hawthorne and her allies saw it as a threat to the established order. Maybe it was. His phone lit up with a text from Jerry. War room meeting 6:30 a.m. Bringing coffee and ammunition, data from other facilities. We've got your back. Another message. Followed this one from Helen. Don't worry about Hawthorne. Mr. Chen doesn't play politics. He watches results. Your quarterly efficiency numbers speak for themselves. Mark worked past midnight, refining his presentation. The same skills that had helped him stretch a maintenance salary to feed his daughter now helped him squeeze maximum impact from minimum resources. Tomorrow would test both him and Sarah. Her first presentation of an advanced math solution. His defense of a company-wide initiative. As he finally headed to bed, he passed Sarah's room. She'd fallen asleep at her desk, her completed assignment, placed carefully in her folder. On the wall above her, She'd hung a photograph of Catherine in her lab coat, smiling at the camera. Someone meeting challenges head-on, changing things for the better. "Watch over us tomorrow, Cat," he whispered. "Our girls fighting battles just like you did. And maybe I am too." His new watch, a practical model, not too flashy, showed 1 a.m., 6 hours until he had to prove, once again, that he belonged in the world he'd stumbled into. 5 hours until Sarah would wake up, ready to show her own new world what a maintenance man's daughter could do. The performance warning arrived the same day as Sarah's first B+. 2 blows, delivered with corporate precision and 4th-grade handwriting, both carrying the same underlying message. "Maybe you don't belong here after all. It's a temporary setback," Ellen said, watching Mark read through the HR document. "Hawthorne's pushing these through for everyone who supported your maintenance restructuring plan. Pure intimidation tactics." Mark set the warning down next to Sarah's physics test. She'd left it on his desk that morning without a word, something she'd never done before. Perfect scores had been her armor, her way of proving she deserved her spot in the gifted program. Now, like him, she was facing the reality that excellence wasn't always enough. 4 complaints about management style in 3 weeks, he read. Aloud, accusations of favoritism toward maintenance staff. Concerns about lack of formal education, affecting decision-making capacity. All from Hawthorne's allies, Helen pointed out. Notice there's nothing about actual performance. Your efficiency programs have already saved the company more than projected. But Mark was remembering Sarah's face at breakfast, the way she'd pushed her food around without eating. "I just need to study harder," she'd said, sounding so grown-up it hurt. "Jenny got an A. Everyone got an A except me." His phone buzzed. Walsh from Finance. "Chen wants updated projections for Q4, meeting in 30 minutes. Another test, another chance to prove himself, or fail spectacularly. "I should prep for—" Mark started, but Helen cut him off. "First, call your daughter." Sarah's teacher emailed. She skipped lunch, said she needed to study. Mark's heart clenched. Sarah, hiding in the library instead of eating. The echo of their old life, hunger and shame tangled together, hit him hard. They'd escaped that, hadn't they? Or just found a different kind of hunger? He found Sarah's number in his contacts, remembering how she'd helped him set up the new phone's speed. Dial. 1 ring. 2. Straight to voicemail. "Mr. Thompson." His assistant poked her head in. "Facilities manager from Building C is here about the equipment audit. Says it's urgent." "Tell him." And Mr. Walsh called again. "Says he needs those projections in 15 minutes, not 30. Mark looked at the performance warning, at Sarah's test, at the dozens of urgent emails flooding his screen. Everything demanding perfection, everyone watching for mistakes. The weight of it all, their new life, their precarious success, pressed down like a physical thing. His phone buzzed again. Sarah's teacher found her crying in bathroom, coming to office now. Something inside Mark snapped. Not anger. Clarity. "Helen," he said quietly, "please cancel my meetings for the next 2 hours, all of them. Even Walsh, especially Walsh." Mark stood, straightening his tie, still not quite natural but no longer foreign. "Tell him he'll have his projections by end of day. And please ask Jerry to cover the equipment audit." "What should I tell them you're doing?" Mark picked up Sarah's test and his performance warning. "Tell them I'm demonstrating proper management priorities." 20 minutes later, he walked into Sarah's school. The secretary recognized him. The maintenance man turned executive was something of a legend now. "She's in the counselor's office," she said softly. "Been having a rough week." He found Sarah curled in an oversized chair, looking small in her new school uniform. Her eyes widened when she saw him. "Daddy? But you have meetings." "Nothing more important than this." He sat beside her. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" "I'm not smart enough," she whispered. "Everyone else comes from private schools. Their parents are doctors and professors. Jenny's mom has 3 degrees. I heard someone say I only got in because of a—" Scholarship. Mark felt the words like a physical blow. Their struggles hadn't ended with his promotion. They'd just changed form. Sarah Martinez, he said, using her full name like Catherine used to do in serious moments. Do you know what I did today? I got my first performance warning. People at work think I don't belong there either. She looked up, surprised. But you're doing amazing things. Mrs. Rodriguez said you're helping other workers get better jobs, like Mr. Chen helped you. And you're doing amazing things too. 1B+ doesn't change that, just like one warning doesn't erase what I can contribute. He pulled out his phone, showing her his calendar. See all these meetings I cancelled? Because some things matter more than looking perfect. Sarah's shoulders relaxed slightly. Mum wouldn't care about the B+, would she? She'd care that you're challenging yourself, learning, growing. He smiled. Want to know a secret? She got a C once in quantum mechanics, drove her crazy, but she said it taught her more than any A ever did. A small smile appeared. Really? Really? Now how about we grab lunch? I know a great pizza place. And I think we both could use a break from proving ourselves for an hour. As they left the school, Mark's phone buzzed again. Probably Walsh. Definitely urgent. He turned the phone off. Some messages could wait. Some couldn't. He was finally learning. Which were which? The security badge logs told a story nobody was meant to notice. Mark found the pattern during his late-night review of building access records. A seemingly routine task that turned into something else entirely. Sunday entries to the executive. Floor, Hawthorne, Walsh, and 6 other senior managers all gathering secretly for the past 3 weekends. Planning a coup, Jerry joked when Mark showed him the logs. Then he saw Mark's expression. Wait, seriously. They sat in Mark's office after hours, surrounded by maintenance reports and budget projections. The evening cleaning crew worked quietly. Beyond the glass walls, their presence oddly comforting, a reminder of the world Mark had come from. Look at the timing, Mark pointed to his screen. Every meeting coincides with a formal complaint against someone on my team. The equipment, audit that mysteriously failed. The efficiency reports that disappeared before the board presentation. Jerry whistled low. They're not just coming after you, they're dismantling your whole program. The Maintenance Education Initiative, the Apprenticeship Pathway, the Technical, Training Fund, everything that would help people advance. Mark ran a hand through his hair, a gesture from his maintenance days that his new suits couldn't quite erase. If they can prove I'm incompetent, it all goes away. His phone buzzed. Sarah, sending a photo of her latest physics homework. She'd started studying with a new group. Kids from different backgrounds who cared more about understanding the material than competing for grades. Sometimes, she told him, the best help comes from unexpected places. As if on cue, there was a knock at his door. Monica Chen, Daniel's wife, whom Mark had met only briefly at company functions, stood there, elegant in business attire that suggested she'd come straight from her law firm. Mrs. Chen, Mark started to stand, but she waved him down. Monica, please. And stay seated, this isn't a formal visit. She closed the door, her expression serious. I understand you've discovered some interesting patterns in the security logs. Mark glanced at Jerry, who nodded slightly. Yes, ma'am. Monica, I was just reviewing standard operational procedures. Yes, that's exactly what you should say. If anyone asks, she sat down, placing her designer bag on his desk with practiced casualness. Just like I'm here discussing the company's annual pro bono initiatives. Nothing to do with certain executives meeting on weekends to orchestrate what could technically be considered corporate sabotage. Mark's mind raced. You know about the meetings? I know many things. Being underestimated has its advantages. Her smile held steel. Did you know I started as a paralegal? Worked my way through law school at night. Daniel was still running his father's single factory then. We both learned that real change happens from the ground up, and that those at the top rarely surrender power gracefully. She opened her bag, removing a thin file. Anonymous complaints are difficult to verify. Documentation of coordinated efforts to undermine company initiatives, however, that's something the board understands quite clearly. Mark studied her carefully. Why help me? Because my husband sees something in you that reminds him of his father. Because your daughter's academic achievements remind me of my own struggles. And because, she tapped the file, I despise watching qualified people being pushed down by those born at the top. Jerry cleared his throat. We've got more evidence. Maintenance logs, time-stamped records of equipment failures that coincide with Mark's presentations. Perfect. Monica stood. Gather. Everything. And Mark, that maintenance education program you're proposing. Double the budget. Sometimes the best defense is a bold offense. After she left, Jerry let out a long breath. Well, that was unexpected. Maybe not, Mark mused, remembering Sarah's words about help coming from unexpected places. His phone buzzed. Again, Sarah sending another photo, this time of her study group sharing pizza and physics notes. She'd captioned it, "Different paths, same destination." Mark smiled, an idea forming. He pulled up his email, copying Helen. Please schedule a company-wide maintenance and operations meeting for Monday. All levels, all facilities. And find me records of every employee who's applied for educational assistance in the past 5 years. What are you thinking? Jerry asked. I'm thinking it's time to show the board what real corporate leadership looks like. Mark opened his bottom drawer, pulling out his old maintenance uniform. And I know exactly what I'm wearing to do it. As the cleaning crew finished outside his office, Mark noticed something he'd missed before. They worked with quiet efficiency, each person's movement supporting the others, no task too small or too large for anyone to handle. It was everything he'd been trying to teach the executive floor, and they'd been demonstrating it all along. Sometimes, the best allies were the ones you'd been working alongside all your life. You just had to remember to look up from your own struggles long enough to see them. The innovation proposal sat open on Mark's desk, its pages filled with a vision that would either save his career or end it spectacularly. He'd been working on it through the weekend, fueled by coffee and memories of every maintenance worker who'd ever shared dreams of advancement over break-room conversations. You're proposing to completely restructure the company's advancement pathway, Helen said, reviewing the draft. Merit-based promotion tracks, educational partnerships, technical certification programs. She paused. Hawthorne's group will fight this with everything they have. Good. Mark adjusted his tie, a gesture that felt natural now. Because everyone else is going to fight just as hard to support it. His phone chimed with a text from Sarah. Did you know Mom wrote a paper about institutional change? Found it in her old research files. Attached was a photo of Catherine's dissertation abstract, discussing how systems resist change until reaching a critical mass of support. Mark smiled. Even now, Catherine was helping them find their way. Dad, can I come to your office after school? Sarah's next message read, Jenny's mum is dropping us off. We're working on our science fair project. It's about organizational dynamics in complex systems. Like mother, like daughter, Helen remarked, reading over his shoulder. She's not the only one following parental footsteps, you know. The maintenance crews have started calling you Chen Jr., said you remind them of how Daniel Chen started, always looking for ways to lift others up. Mark's email pinged, the latest company-wide employee satisfaction survey. Buried in the data was everything he needed. Hundreds of talented individuals stuck in positions below their capabilities, not for lack of skill, but lack of opportunity. Get me Jerry, he said. And call Monica Chen. It's time to put all the pieces together. An hour later, his office had transformed into a war room. Jerry arrived with maintenance logs showing how unofficial mentorship programs had improved efficiency across all facilities. Monica brought legal frameworks for implementing company-wide educational benefits, and Sarah, working quietly in the corner on her science project, provided unexpected insights that made them all pause. See, Mum's paper talks about how change happens in layers, she explained, spreading out her notes. You can't just push from the top. You need support from every level, all moving together. Mark stared at his daughter's diagram, seeing his professional challenge through the lens of an 8th-grade science project. That's it, he whispered. We've been fighting this the wrong way. He pulled up his proposal, starting a new section. Implementation through integration. Instead of creating a new program, he explained, we show how this benefits existing structures. Maintenance workers getting technical certifications means fewer equipment failures. Educational partnerships improve recruitment and retention. Every level of the company gets stronger, and every department gets credit for the improvement, Monica added, catching on. Including Hawthorne's division, Mark finished. We're not fighting them. We're making them look good, Jerry laughed. Killing them with competence. I like it. Mark worked through the night, Sarah falling asleep on his office couch, surrounded by textbooks and research papers. The final proposal emerged as something unique, part business strategy, part social innovation, part personal testimony. He included stories from his maintenance days, data from current operations, and projections that even Walsh couldn't dispute. At dawn, Helen arrived to find them still there. She took one look at the completed proposal and smiled. You know what today is? She asked. Mark shook his head, too tired to remember. It's exactly 1 month since that text message you sent Mr. Chen. The one everyone thought was a mistake. Sarah stirred on the couch, blinking awake. Dad, did you finish? We finished, he corrected, watching her examine their work with Catherine's focused intensity. Think Mom would approve? She'd say. Sarah adopted a serious expression, mimicking Catherine's academic tone. That systemic change requires both structural innovation and human understanding. They all laughed, the sound carrying through the empty office corridors, where in a few hours the real test would begin. Mark's phone buzzed one last time. Daniel Chen. Heard you were here all night. Good. Some changes are worth losing sleep. Over, boardroom 9 a.m. Bring your maintenance uniform. Why the uniform? Jerry asked, reading over Mark's shoulder. Mark thought about Catherine's paper, about Sarah's diagram showing layers of change moving together, about Chen wearing his father's watch. Because, he said, sometimes the best way to move forward is to remember where you started. Sarah gathered her science project materials, yawning. Mum also said that the best solutions come from understanding both sides of an equation. Mark looked at his reflection in the office window, his new suit and tie, the maintenance uniform waiting in his drawer, his daughter's inherited wisdom lighting the way forward. Sometimes the real innovation wasn't in the change you created, but in how you brought everyone along with you. The Chen Industries boardroom felt different at 8:45 a.m., with Mark wearing his maintenance uniform under his suit jacket. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the morning cleaning crew finishing their shift, the same people who'd witnessed his late-night planning sessions, now pausing to give him subtle thumbs-up as they passed. Interesting fashion choice, Monica Chen remarked, entering with a stack of folders. She wore a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than Mark's old monthly salary, but her smile held genuine warmth. Though I suspect that's the point. Board members filtered in, their reactions to Mark's unusual attire ranging from raised eyebrows to careful neutrality. Hawthorne arrived last, flanked by Walsh and her other allies, her momentary surprise quickly masked by professional disdain. Mr. Thompson, she said. "I wasn't aware we'd relaxed the dress code for board meetings." "Actually," Daniel Chen's voice came from the doorway, "I requested it." He entered wearing his father's watch, and to everyone's shock, a maintenance uniform of his own, worn, faded, clearly decades old. Sometimes we need visual reminders of where success really comes from. The room hushed. Mark noticed several board members studying Chen's uniform with new understanding. The CEO had started in maintenance too, learning his father's business from the ground up. "Now," Chen continued, taking his seat, "I believe we're here to discuss Mr. Thompson's company-wide initiative." Mark stood, conscious of every eye on him. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. Sarah's daily good luck text. She was presenting her science project today, too, teaching her class about organizational change, using his proposal as a case study. "Before I begin," Mark said, "I'd like to share something." He removed his suit jacket, fully revealing the maintenance uniform underneath. This uniform represents thousands of employees who keep this company running, people with skills, dreams, and potential waiting to be recognized. He activated the presentation screen, but instead of starting with charts and projections, he showed a series of photographs. Maintenance workers attending night school, security guards studying for technical certifications, cleaning staff teaching, each other English between shifts. These images were taken over the past 5 years. Every person you see used their own time and money, struggling to advance while keeping our facilities running. Many of them are parents, working multiple shifts, fighting for their children's futures just like I was. Hawthorne shifted uncomfortably. Several board members leaned forward. "The proposal before you isn't just about efficiency or cost savings, though the numbers support both." Mark advanced to the financial projections that had kept him up nights to perfect. "It's about recognizing that our greatest untapped resource is the talent already within our walls." For the next 30 minutes, he laid out his vision. Comprehensive education programs, clear advancement pathways, technical training partnerships. Every point supported by data, every initiative tied to bottom-line benefits. By investing in our workforce's development, he concluded, we don't just reduce turnover and increase efficiency. We create a culture of growth that attracts top talent at all levels. We become known not just for our products, but for how we value our people. Walsh studied his notes. "The implementation costs are offset within 18 months, Mark finished, and that's conservative. What can't be quantified is the loyalty and innovation that comes from employees who know their company believes in them." "This is all very inspiring," Hawthorne cut in. "But surely you understand the risks of promoting unqualified, like you were promoting your nephew." Monica's voice carried just the right note of casual interest. "Before he failed the technical certification exam 3 times, Hawthorne paled. In the sudden silence, Chen spoke. "When my father started this company, he made one promise. Everyone who worked hard would have a chance to grow. Not just the ones with degrees or connections, but anyone willing to learn and contribute." He touched his father's watch. "Mark Thompson has shown us how to keep that promise in today's world." The board chairman cleared his throat. "I move we put it to a vote." Mark held his breath as hands raised. He thought of Sarah, probably standing before her class right now, explaining how systems change when people work together. He thought of Catherine, whose research had helped him understand how to make that change happen. "Motion carries," the chairman announced. "Mr. Thompson, you have full authorization and funding to proceed." The room erupted in conversation. Chen shook Mark's hand, beaming. "Well done," he said quietly, "though I suspect this is just the beginning." Mark's phone buzzed again. A photo from Sarah. Her science project had won first place. Below it, she'd written, "Mom would be so proud of us both today." Looking around the boardroom, Mark saw not victory over his opponents, but the start of something bigger. Hawthorne and Walsh were already studying the proposal details, their resistance transforming into reluctant interest. Other board members were sharing stories of their own humble beginnings. Change, Mark realized, sometimes looked less like confrontation and more like conversation, less like winning and more like growing, less like climbing up and more like lifting others with you. The company newsletter headline read, Chen Industries launches groundbreaking employee development program. But it was the smaller stories beneath that made Mark pause in his morning reading. Maintenance worker earns engineering certification. While on job, single mother in cleaning staff completes business management degree. Security guard's daughter receives college scholarship. They're calling it the Thompson effect, Helen said, bringing in his morning coffee. Though personnel prefers the Chen Industries Advancement Initiative officially. They can call it whatever they want, Mark replied, as long as it keeps working. He gestured to the stack of applications on his desk. Hundreds of employees, signing up for educational programs, technical training, and advancement tracks. His office door was open, a deliberate choice these days. Through it came the sounds of the newly established mentorship center down the hall, where experienced staff helped others navigate their development paths. He'd even spotted Hawthorne there yesterday, reluctantly impressed by a maintenance worker's innovative solution to a persistent HVAC issue. Mr. Thompson, a young woman in a cleaning staff uniform, stood in his doorway, clutching a folder. Do you have a moment? Maria, right? Mark remembered her from his maintenance days. Please come in. She sat down, nervous but determined. I heard about your story, the text message, how Mr. Chen gave you a chance. I've been taking online accounting classes at night, and there's this internship opportunity in finance. Mark thought of another nervous parent, sitting in this same office months ago, desperate for a chance. Tell me about your goals, he said, moving the newsletter aside. Some stories mattered more than headlines. His phone buzzed. Sarah sending her usual morning update. Her physics grade had rebounded to an A, but more importantly, she'd started a peer tutoring program. Jenny helps with advanced calculations, she wrote, and I help explain the concepts in Spanish for the ESL students. Mom always said education should open doors for everyone. The message carried a photo. Sarah and her diverse study group crowded around a library table, textbooks and snacks mingling freely. In the background, he spotted the certificate they'd won for their organizational dynamics project, now being used as a model by other schools in the district. A knock at his door interrupted his reply. Jerry entered grinning. You need to see this. He led Mark to the maintenance break room, now transformed into a combination break room and study space. Tables that once held only coffee cups and yesterday's newspapers now featured laptops and textbooks. The old bulletin board, previously plastered with shift schedules and safety notices, now included college course catalogs and certification program flyers. But it was the wall of photographs that stopped Mark cold. Dozens of pictures showing employees at graduations, certification ceremonies, and promotion celebrations. In the center hung a familiar image, Mark in his maintenance uniform, Sarah and Catherine at a school science fair years ago. They put it up last week, Jerry explained, said it reminds them anything's possible. Back in his office, Mark found Monica Chen waiting with quarterly reports. The board's impressed, she said without preamble. Efficiency up 12%, turnover down 28%. But look at this. She handed him a different document, letters from employees' children, thanking the company for helping their parents advance. One caught his eye, a carefully drawn card showing a woman in a graduation cap, signed by a 7-year-old whose mother had just completed her GED through the program. Sometimes numbers don't tell the whole story, Monica smiled. Though Daniel will be pleased to know the financial projections were conservative. We're seeing returns well ahead of schedule. Mark's phone buzzed again. a photo from Mrs. Rodriguez. Sarah teaching Spanish to Jenny's mum, who'd decided to learn the language to better understand her daughter's growing interest in Latin American mathematics pioneers. "Your girl," Mrs. Rodriguez wrote. "She builds bridges everywhere she goes." The afternoon brought more visitors. Walsh from finance, surprisingly enthusiastic about a cost-saving innovation proposed by a former maintenance worker. Hawthorne, quietly requesting information about expanding the program to other regions, and a steady stream of employees, each with their own dreams and determination. At day's end, Mark stood at his office window, watching the shift change below. Workers greeting each other, sharing textbooks and encouragement, moving with the confidence of people who could see their futures expanding. Among them, he spotted Maria from the morning meeting, already deep in conversation with one of the finance department mentors. His reflection in the glass caught his eye, suit and tie now as natural as his maintenance uniform had once been. But it wasn't the clothes that defined him anymore. It was the ability to open doors, to show others that their dreams had value, to prove that one person's opportunity could become everyone's possibility. The last buzz of his phone for the day. Sarah asking if they could stop by Catherine's grave this weekend. "I want to tell Mom about all the changes," she wrote, "about how we're helping people believe in themselves, just like she always helped us believe in ourselves." Some legacies, Mark realized, grew stronger with each life they touched. The Chen Industries Advancement Foundation's charter hung framed in Mark's new office on the executive floor, but his old maintenance uniform still held a place of honor beside it. 6 months into the program's success, he'd been promoted to Chief of Employee Development, a position created specifically to expand what had begun with a desperate late-night text. "Your signature goes here," Monica Chen said, sliding the final document across his desk. "This makes it official. The foundation becomes a permanent part of Chen Industries, with guaranteed annual funding." Mark picked up the pen, thinking, of all the signatures that had led to this moment, Sarah's gifted program application, his original promotion paperwork, Catherine's life insurance policy that hadn't quite covered her medical bills. Each signature a turning point, though he hadn't always known it at the time. "We've already received inquiries from 12 other companies," Monica continued. "They want to implement similar programs. Daniel thinks we should create a consulting division, help other corporations transform their workplace cultures." Before Mark could respond, Helen appeared at the door. "Sorry to interrupt, but you'll want to see this." She led them to the building's main lobby, now transformed into an impromptu graduation ceremony. Maria from the cleaning staff stood in her cap and gown, having just completed her accounting degree. Her colleagues had organized a surprise celebration. During their lunch break, maintenance workers, executives, and security staff all mingling naturally, sharing cake and congratulations. "Remember when these groups wouldn't even eat in the same break room?" Jerry appeared beside Mark, watching the scene. "Now look at them." Mark did look, seeing beyond the surface celebration to the deeper changes. Walsh from finance was earnestly discussing career opportunities with a maintenance worker. Hawthorne, who now championed the program to other regional directors, was introducing Maria to corporate recruiters. The barriers hadn't just been lowered, they'd been transformed into bridges. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Dad got into the National Science Academy summer program. Full scholarship." Attached was a photo of her acceptance letter and a note praising her research on organizational dynamics and educational access. At 14, she was already building on what they'd started here. "Mr. Thompson," a voice pulled him back to the lobby. Andre, one of the security guards, stood before him with his teenage daughter. "Sorry to bother you, but Maya here has some questions about the educational support program. She's interested in engineering and with the foundation's scholarship." Mark smiled, remembering another father and daughter with dreams that seemed impossible. "Let's talk in my office." As they walked, he noticed Maya wearing a familiar silver cross. "That's beautiful," he said. "It was my mum's," Maya replied. "She passed when I was little. Dad says she'd be proud I want to be an engineer. She worked in a lab too." Mark caught Andre's eye, saw the same mix of pride and worry he'd once carried. "You know," he said, "I have someone you should meet. My daughter Sarah's starting a STEM mentorship program at her school. I think you two would have a lot in common." Back in his office, as he helped Maya and Andre navigate the scholarship application, Mark's gaze fell on his wall of photographs. The collection had grown. Sarah at science competitions, maintenance workers at graduation ceremonies, families celebrating new beginnings. At the center still hung the old science fair photo with Catherine, now joined by a recent image, Mark and Sarah at her school's leadership awards, both beaming at the camera. His computer chimed with an email from Daniel Chen. "Board meeting. Tomorrow. Bring your maintenance uniform again. Some traditions are worth keeping." Mark smiled, remembering that first dramatic board presentation. These days, the uniform was more symbol than shock tactic, a reminder that value could be found at every level of an organization, that leadership could rise from any position, that one person's opportunity could spark institutional change. "Maya," he said, turning back to his visitors, "let me tell you a story about possibilities. It starts with a text message sent by mistake, but it's really about something bigger, about how change happens when we give people chances to prove their potential." As he shared their journey, Mark watched Maya's eyes light up with recognition and hope. Andre stood straighter, seeing their own struggles and dreams reflected in the story. Through his open office door drifted the sounds of the ongoing celebration below, voices mixed together without regard for title or position, united in the simple joy of witnessing someone's dream become reality. His phone buzzed one final time that day. Sarah had sent a photo of Catherine's old research papers, now serving as reference material for her summer program application. "Mum's work on institutional change helped shape your program," she wrote. "And now it's helping me understand how to keep building on what you started. Full circle, right?" Full circle indeed, Mark thought. But circles could expand, reaching ever outward, touching more lives with each revolution. Some changes, once set in motion, knew no bounds. The Foundation Charter's signing ceremony took place in the same boardroom where Mark had once stood in his maintenance uniform, fighting for a chance to prove his vision. Now, 1 year later, representatives from 20 major corporations filled the space, each ready to implement their own versions of what the media had dubbed the Thompson model. "It's surreal," Mark confided to Daniel Chen as they watched the gathering. "When I sent that text message, I was just trying to feed my daughter." "And now you're feeding dreams across the country," Chen replied, adjusting his father's watch. "Though I suspect Sarah would say, we're simply creating optimal conditions for natural growth potential." Mark smiled, recognizing his daughter's new vocabulary from her advanced biology courses. At 15, Sarah had become the youngest student ever accepted into her school's accelerated research program. Her project on social mobility through educational access had caught the attention of university researchers. Mr. Thompson. Maria, now a full-time accountant at Chen Industries, approached with a group of visitors. These are the representatives from Martinez Manufacturing in Arizona. They're interested in how we integrated educational support with workplace advancement. The company name caught Mark's attention. Martinez. No relation to Catherine, Maria smiled. But they were very interested to hear about her research on institutional change. Your daughter's presentation at the National Science Academy made quite an impression. Before Mark could respond, Helen appeared with an urgent message. A major tech company in California was announcing a $1 billion commitment to employee education and advancement programs, directly citing Chen Industries' initiative as their model. Their CEO had been in the audience when Sarah presented her research. "It's happening faster than we projected," Monica Chen said, joining them with the latest data. 17 companies launching programs this quarter alone. The ripple effect is becoming a wave. Mark's phone buzzed. A news alert about a proposed state bill mandating educational support programs in large corporations. The legislation's informal name? The Thompson-Martinez Act. "Dad!" Sarah's voice cut through the crowded boardroom. She rushed in, still wearing her school uniform, waving a tablet. "Have you seen this?" She pulled up a video that had gone viral overnight. A maintenance worker at another company, inspired by Mark's story, had created a mobile app helping employees find educational resources and mentorship opportunities. The comments section was filled with similar stories: parents advancing careers while supporting children's dreams, students helping parents with online courses, communities transforming through education and opportunity. "Look at the pattern," Sarah said, her eyes shining with Catherine's focused intensity. "It's exactly what Mom described in her research, how individual actions can trigger systematic change when the right support structures are in place." The boardroom had grown quiet, attention drawn to the teenager explaining complex social dynamics with passionate clarity. Mark noticed Daniel Chen watching with particular interest. "Sarah," Chen said, "how would you feel about addressing our next corporate leadership summit? I think our partners need to hear your perspective on the future of workplace evolution." Sarah's eyes widened. "Really? I mean, I'm just a student." "You're a bridge builder," Chen corrected. "Like your father, like your mother. Sometimes the best vision of the future comes from those who understand both struggle and possibility." Later that evening, Mark and Sarah visited Catherine's grave, sharing their news as the setting sun painted the quiet cemetery in gold. They'd started coming here to seek comfort. Now they came to celebrate progress. "Mom would love how her research is helping people," Sarah said, arranging fresh flowers. "Her work on institutional change, my project on educational access, your program. It's all connected." Mark touched the headstone gently. "She always said education was about more than books and degrees. It was about opening doors, breaking cycles, showing people their own potential." His phone buzzed one last time that day. A message from Maya, Andre's daughter, who'd just been accepted into the engineering program at MIT with a full foundation scholarship. Attached was a photo of her wearing her mother's cross, standing proudly with her father, another circle completing, Sarah observed, reading over his shoulder, and starting new ones. They walked back to their car as darkness settled, the city, lights beginning to twinkle. Tomorrow would bring more meetings, more programs to implement, more lives to touch. Sarah had her presentation to prepare, Mark had partnerships to build, and somewhere across the country, another parent was probably working a late shift, dreaming of better opportunities for their child. But tonight, in the gentle evening air, father and daughter paused to appreciate how far they'd come from that desperate midnight text message, how a simple mistake had grown into a movement, how one family's story had become a blueprint for change. "You know what Mom would say about all this?" Sarah asked, her voice soft in the gathering dusk. Mark smiled, hearing Catherine's words in his heart. She'd say that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest chances taken. The family photo album lay open on Mark's desk, its newest additions telling a story even Catherine couldn't have imagined. Sarah's keynote speech at the National Educational Access Conference. Mark receiving the Presidential Medal for Workplace Innovation, the Thompson-Martinez Foundation's first nationwide scholarship ceremony. "Remember this one?" Sarah asked, pointing to the old science fair photo. They were in Mark's executive office, preparing for today's special announcement. Mum's calculator still works, by the way. I use it in my advanced physics class. Some things are built to last, Mark replied, straightening his tie, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing, like your mother's ideas about institutional change. The morning sun streamed through his office windows, catching the silver of Catherine's cross around Sarah's neck. At 16, she'd grown into a poised young woman who balanced academic excellence with her growing role as a youth advocate for educational access. Her recent TED Talk, From Crisis to Catalyst, How My Father's Wrong Number Changed American Business, had garnered over 1 million views. "Mr. Thompson," Helen appeared at the door. "They're ready for you both in the auditorium." The Chen Industries auditorium had been transformed. Where once it hosted standard corporate meetings, today it welcomed hundreds of students and parents from across the country, the first recipients of the Thompson-Martinez National Scholarship Program. Mark spotted familiar faces. Maria's son, starting college next fall, Maya home from her first year at MIT, Andre beaming with paternal pride, Daniel. Chen stood at the podium, his father's watch catching the light. 2 years ago, a desperate father sent a text message by mistake. Today, that mistake has evolved into a movement that's transformed thousands of lives. He paused, smiling. But rather than hear it from me, I'd like to introduce 2 people who remind us that change begins with believing in possibilities. Sarah squeezed Mark's hand as they walked to the stage. The maintenance uniform he'd worn to that first board meeting was now displayed prominently in the company museum, alongside Catherine's research papers and Sarah's original science project. "Good morning," Mark began, surveying the crowd. "Everyone here has a story of struggle, of dreams deferred, of chances nearly missed. Today, we're not just celebrating scholarships, we're celebrating the end of having to choose between supporting your family and pursuing your potential." Sarah stepped forward, her voice clear and confident. "My mother was a scientist who believed in the power of catalysts, elements that spark reactions without being consumed themselves. Every person in this room has the potential to be that catalyst in their community." As they took turns sharing their journey, Mark noticed something remarkable about their audience. Corporate executives sat beside maintenance workers. Parents who'd once feared for their children's futures now held acceptance letters to prestigious universities. Former opponents like Hawthorne had become passionate advocates, leading similar transformations at other companies. "The Thompson-Martinez Foundation isn't just about funding education," Sarah explained. "It's about recognizing that talent and determination can be found everywhere, waiting for a chance to grow." Mark added, "It's about remembering that every parent's struggle to provide opportunities matters, that every child's dream deserves nurturing, that every wrong number might just be the right connection waiting to happen." After the ceremony, as families celebrated and new connections formed, Mark found a quiet moment in his office. His phone buzzed with messages from across the country, companies implementing new programs, lives being changed, cycles of poverty being broken. Sarah found him there, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "Dad, I found something in Mum's old research files." She handed him a worn notebook. "It's from her final project, the one she never got to finish." Mark opened it carefully, recognizing Catherine's handwriting. "Theory of transformative opportunity. How individual acts of belief cascade into systemic change." "Look at the date," Sarah whispered. It was from the week before Catherine fell ill, her last academic work. The final page held a personal note. "To my brilliant Sarah, remember that every equation needs both sides to balance. Your mind will take you far, but it's your heart that will show you the way to help others. To my beloved Mark, keep believing in possibilities. The greatest changes often come from the smallest moments of courage." Mark pulled Sarah close, both of them feeling Catherine's presence in the words she'd left behind. Through his office window, They could see the next generation of scholarship recipients dispersing into the world, each carrying a piece of their story, each ready to become their own catalyst for change. "Mum knew," Sarah said softly. "Somehow she knew we'd find a way to make a difference." "She did more than know," Mark replied, touching the notebook gently. "She gave us the formula. We just had to be brave enough to solve it." Outside, the city stretched toward the horizon, full of more stories waiting to unfold, more wrong numbers waiting to become right connections, more dreams waiting for their chance to grow. The acceptance letter from Stanford University's Advanced Research Program arrived on the same morning as the Wall Street Journal article. Thompson-Martinez Model Transforms American Workplace: How One Text Message Sparked a National Movement. Sarah had spread both across their breakfast table, her excitement barely contained. "Early admission with a full research fellowship," she beamed, pointing to the Stanford letterhead. "And look, they want me to expand on Mom's work on institutional change. Professor Chen is going to be my advisor." "Professor Chen?" Mark looked up from his coffee. "Daniel Chen's daughter. She left corporate law to teach organizational psychology. Says our story inspired her to study how personal connections drive systemic change." Mark smiled, remembering Monica Chen's words from years ago about being underestimated. Now another Chen woman was helping shape the future, working alongside. Catherine Martinez's daughter. Some patterns were too perfect to be coincidental. His phone buzzed with an alert from Helen. The newest employment figures had been released. Companies that had adopted the Thompson-Martinez model showed a 40% increase in employee advancement, with particular growth among single parents and first-generation college students. The data validated everything they'd fought for. "Mr. Thompson?" Maria appeared in his home office doorway. She'd insisted on delivering this news personally. "The international expansion numbers just came in. 12 countries have now implemented workplace education programs based on our model. Australia just signed on this morning." Sarah looked up from her acceptance letter. "Dad, do you realize what this means? The mathematical progression suggests that your mother's theory about cascading change was right," Mark finished. "Small actions multiplying exponentially when given the right conditions." They shared a knowing look. Catherine's final research, discovered in that worn notebook, had become the theoretical foundation for their practical success. Sarah had expanded on it for her science projects, and now she would pursue it at the university level. His phone buzzed again, Daniel Chen requesting a video call. Mark accepted, and Chen's familiar face appeared on screen, his father's watch visible on his wrist. "Mark, Sarah, you'll want to see this." Chen held up a document. "The Senate just passed the Educational Access and Workplace Advancement Act. They're calling it the Thompson-Martinez Bill officially now. Full federal support for company-based education programs, scholarship funding, the works." Sarah grabbed her tablet, pulling up the news. "Look at the vote margin. It was nearly unanimous. Both parties supported it." "Hard to argue with success," Chen smiled, "especially when it helps everyone. But that's not why I called. Mark, we need you in Washington next week. The president wants to discuss implementing this nationwide, making it a model for federal hiring practices." Mark thought of his maintenance uniform, still displayed in the company museum. From wrong number to White House, Catherine would never believe it. "Actually," Sarah interjected, "according to Mom's research, this kind of exponential social change is exactly what happens when you remove artificial barriers to human potential. She predicted it, Dad. She just didn't know we'd be the ones to prove her right." After the call, Mark found Sarah in their home library, once a cramped apartment corner, now a warm space filled with books and memories. She sat at Catherine's old desk, her Stanford acceptance letter propped against a photo of her mother in her lab coat. I found something else in Mum's research files, Sarah said softly. A letter she wrote to me, dated just before, you know. She handed him a yellowed envelope. There's something for you, too. Mark unfolded the paper carefully, recognizing Catherine's elegant handwriting. My dearest Sarah and Mark, if you're reading this, you've probably discovered my research on transformative opportunity theory. But the real experiment was always you two, my brilliant daughter, who sees patterns in everything, and my beloved husband who never stops believing in possibility. Sarah, your mind will create solutions. That change lives. Mark, your heart will show people their own worth. Together, you'll prove my hypothesis, that hope, given structure and support, can transform entire systems. Keep building bridges, keep opening doors, keep sending messages into the darkness, believing they'll reach exactly who needs them, all. My love, Catherine. Sarah wiped tears from her cheeks. She knew, Dad, not about the text message or Chen Industries, but about what we could do if we got the chance. Mark looked around their library, thinking of all the lives changed, all the dreams unleashed, all the wrong numbers that had become right connections. On his phone, messages continued to arrive, more companies adopting their model, more families, finding paths forward, more proof that Catherine's theory of cascading change was reshaping the world. Your mom was a scientist, he said finally. She understood that every reaction needs a catalyst. She just didn't know that sometimes that catalyst could be love. Love for a daughter, love for learning, love for possibility itself. Sarah nodded, touching her mother's cross. And now we get to prove her theory right over and over again. No, Mark corrected gently. Now we get to help others prove it for themselves. The collection of thank you letters filled an entire wall in the Thompson-Martinez Foundation's headquarters. Thousands of stories of transformation, each one beginning with, "You showed us it was possible." Mark stood before them on his last day as CEO, preparing to hand over leadership to a former maintenance worker who'd risen through the program. Having a moment? Sarah's voice came from behind him. Now 19 and home from her first year at Stanford, she carried herself with Catherine's quiet confidence and her own hard-won wisdom. Just thinking about where it all started, Mark replied, touching one of the oldest letters from Maria, written after her first accounting job offer. One desperate text message. One catalyst, Sarah corrected, slipping into her researcher's voice. Mum would say we need to be precise with our terminology. Her eyes sparkled with humor, but her point was serious. They'd learned that precision mattered when you were describing a model that others would follow. The Foundation's main hall buzzed with activity beyond the letter wall. Teams coordinated educational programs across 3 continents. Former program recipients mentored new participants. Corporate partners collaborated with community colleges, creating pathways that hadn't existed 5 years ago. Mark's phone buzzed. Daniel Chen sending a photo from Washington. The Thompson-Martinez bill had spawned a whole series of workplace transformation laws. The latest expanded their model into public service sectors, police academies offering college credits, firefighters accessing advanced certification programs, teachers receiving paid sabbaticals for further education. Did you see the latest data? Sarah asked, pulling up her research tablet. Companies using our model show a 60% increase in employee retention, 45% rise in internal promotions, and this would have made Mom so happy, an 80% rate of educational support being passed forward. People who benefit from the program overwhelmingly help others access similar opportunities. Speaking of which, Mark smiled, how's the new theory coming along? Sarah's expanded version of Catherine's work on transformative opportunity theory had become her undergraduate thesis project. She'd added real-world data from their program's success, creating a mathematical model for how personal connection could drive institutional change. Professor Chen says it could revolutionize how we think about social mobility, Sarah admitted, trying to sound casual but unable to hide her excitement. "We're calling it the Martinez-Thompson Cascade Effect. Mom's name first, of course." Of course," Mark agreed, his throat tight with pride and memory. A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Maya had arrived with her MIT engineering team. All Foundation Scholarship recipients, all children of maintenance workers, security guards and cleaning staff. They'd developed an app that matched employees' skills and dreams with educational opportunities already adopted by companies in 15 countries. "Mr. Thompson," Maya rushed over, her mother's cross catching the light. "We just got approved for global distribution. Companies as far as Singapore are implementing it next quarter." Mark watched Sarah immediately engage with Maya's team, discussing data patterns and user interface improvements. In moments like these, he saw Catherine most clearly, not in Sarah's features, but in her passionate belief that knowledge should open doors for everyone. His phone buzzed one final time that day. A message from Mrs. Rodriguez, still teaching Spanish to employees' children after all these years. She'd attached a photo of his old maintenance uniform, now in a museum exhibition about social transformation in American business. The placard beside it read, "Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest chances taken." "Dad?" Sarah touched his arm. "It's time for the transition ceremony." They walked together through the Foundation's halls, passing walls covered with photos of graduates, news clippings, and framed academic papers. Catherine's original research prominently displayed alongside Sarah's expanding theoretical framework. The Martinez-Thompson model had become more than a workplace program. It was a testament to what people could achieve when given both opportunity and support. In the main auditorium, Mark faced the gathered crowd, employees, beneficiaries, partners and friends. Maya and her team sat beside Maria and her accounting department. Andre, now a senior manager, held a seat for his daughter between board meetings. Even Hawthorne was there, having become one of their strongest advocates in the corporate world. 5 years ago, Mark began, a desperate father made a mistake that turned out to be anything but wrong. Today, as I step down from leadership, I'm reminded of something my late wife Catherine wrote in her research. True change isn't measured in programs created or policies passed, but in lives transformed and dreams awakened. He gestured to the Foundation's new CEO, James Rodriguez, Mrs. Rodriguez's grandson, who'd worked his way up from maintenance while earning his MBA through their program. The future belongs to those who understand that every person's potential is a resource, too valuable to waste. Sarah stood to join him at the podium, both of them feeling Catherine's presence in the moment. Together, they'd proved her theory right, that hope, given structure and support, could transform not just individuals or companies, but the very fabric of opportunity itself. The wrong number that had once felt like a catastrophic mistake had become exactly the right connection. Not just for one family, but for thousands of families still discovering that their dreams, too, were wrong numbers waiting to become right answers.